Oh, welcome everybody to WagerTalk Today. We are talking West Carolina, NC Greensboro, St. Bonnie versus LaSalle. Adam Trigger up first. Rob Veno going to join us. He's going to look at UNLV at Air Force, Belmont at Drake, and Andrew McInnis at the end of the show as a couple of NHL prop bets. Teddy's got his big game breakdown. I hope to make you laugh a few times, but who knows? It's improvised and unplanned. Adam Trigger, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Just want to make sure my mic was on. It looks like it is. I had a nice night last night, 3-0 sweep, hit another 5%er. Now 6-1 on 5% plays, 5% college basketball plays so far in 2024. I've got another one tonight. 8-1 of my last 9 picks overall, so I'm doing good. Hopefully, hopefully we can keep it going. I feel like I'm due a little bit of like a prolonged good run, so maybe this is it.
Well, I hope it is, my friend. Adam, before we get into your first game, and Teddy will talk to you about that, FB Coach, one of our most loyal listeners. I mean, he's in this chat every single day, period. He writes, and this is the first comment in the show, how and why is Georgia pick'em versus Vandy today? This might be the craziest line I've ever seen. What is he missing here?
I mean, I don't think he's missing anything to think this line is, is a little bit strange. Like, I certainly make Georgia a favorite here. Now, it's important to point out, I think, Prez, that this opened, I think, Georgia -2. It got bet to a pick. Probably a little bit of recency here. Like, Georgia's lost 6 straight games. And then I know for me personally, like, Georgia was the team I had rated dead last in the SEC coming into this season. I remember being out in the Bahamas with my friends, and I was sitting next to Kelly. We were out there for her birthday. One of the teams we got to see was Georgia. And I sort of remember saying matter-of-factly, like, this is the worst team in the SEC this year. Now, this is, of course, second week in November before we really knew anything. But I felt like, a team that was relying on Noah Thomason, who was like the best player of a kind of an average Niagara team last year, to now be like the go-to guy in the SEC. I thought they'd be the worst team in the league. They got off to a really good start. I think White's done a good job there. But they're sort of regressing back to what they were supposed to be. And then you throw them on the road. I guess, like, to me, that's a little bit too big of a bump for home court for Vandy, who's been pretty bad themselves. I made this closer to like Georgia -3, but I don't really want a part of Georgia going on the road. So I don't disagree with the fact that the line is a little odd. I wonder if there's an injury, but not enough for me to get involved here either way.
And of course, this line opened Georgia -2, -3, depending on.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there were 3s out there. There was somebody opened to 3. So it was there momentarily, but not for long. Let's talk about some of the games you wanted to talk about today, Adam Trigger, and that starts with the very first game on the college basketball board for Wednesday. Early start, 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock here on the left coast. NC Greensboro and Western Carolina. A little bit of money for the dog here. Greensboro now a 3.5-point favorite. Total sitting between 139 and 140. What do you want to do with Western Carolina, NC Greensboro, Wednesday night college hoops?
Yeah, there was a little money for the dog, unfortunately, because that's how I want to go here. And this kind of got hit pretty quickly, knocked off. I think it was like 5 or 4.5 most places, now down to 3.5. I wouldn't be that surprised, Teddy, if this got bought back a little bit. If it does, I may actually lock in Western Carolina. I'd love like a 4 or 4.5 here. But if you remember, this is a game I came and talked on this show about a few weeks back. Maybe the 3rd week of January. I was on Western Carolina in that game, and it was kind of like a heartbreaking loss. They lost the game 85-82 in overtime. It was a fantastic game that really could have gone either way. Western Carolina made a nice comeback. I think they had the lead in overtime briefly and then lost the game. But I go back to that game, and Western Carolina at home shot just 38% from the field. Which is odd for a team that shoots the 3 as well as they do. It was just a kind of an off shooting night for them, which cost them. But for a lot of the same reasons I liked them in the first meeting, I think taking the points with them makes sense here. So you go back to the first meeting. I mean, Mikal Brown-Jones, like him having a monster game at this point for UNCG is just sort of a normal thing to expect. He's just a phenomenal player. He's having a phenomenal season. But he went for 39 and 9 in that game. And man, every time they needed him to make a play, he made it. And was a big reason that they were able to pull out that game on the road. But, as far as this spot, now you're going, the revenge game, if you will, you're getting like multiple key numbers of Western Carolina. I don't see any reason not to take the points here. I referenced the 3-point shooting in the first game. Western Carolina just couldn't hit from 3, but this is a very good 3-point shooting team. And Greensboro does give up a lot of open threes. This is a team I've gotten to see play in person this year. I've followed them a little bit, and they will give up open threes, which should help Western Carolina, because more often than not, they're going to hit those threes. The other thing I've noticed about Greensboro is they will sort of roll through the lesser teams in this league. But, it's not always as easy against the top the top other 3 teams, them being one of them. 0-2 against Samford. They split with Chattanooga. And the Furman games are a little bit misleading. One was a really close win, and the other was a game where Furman had like the flu or something and was missing 3 of their starters. So, Western Carolina being the other top team, of course, I just told you they played a great overtime game down at Western Carolina earlier this year, makes me think that maybe Greensboro is a little bit inflated on the number here. The other thing is, I got to go to Greensboro Coliseum for a UNCG game. It's not the same as going for the ACC tournament, Teddy. That building holds like 20,000, but they configure it for 4,500 for UNCG games, and they haven't really had much of a turnout this year. Most of the games are getting 2,000 fans or so. It's kind of a weird atmosphere for a game. So I think Western Carolina can hang around. I think UNCG is going to give them some open looks from 3, and the 4 or 4.5 should be good enough here. If it gets back to 4 or 4.5, it's probably going to be a client play.
Adam Trigger joining us, everyone. Before we get into your next game, a question from the chat room. And Teddy, I would really like your thoughts on this. And I think this is a great question. Bill Sandoval, another regular listener in the chat room almost every day. Really appreciate that, Bill. Prez, if you have the time to touch on Saturday games, with so many games, I get too excited and end up not having a good day. And this is something I hear from a lot of people, especially during college football or college basketball season, where there are hundreds of betting opportunities available to you. Teddy, I'll go to you first. How do you tackle Saturday versus any other day of the week? And how do you avoid, those 3 and 17 days because you're so excited and you can't resist betting the volume that might not be there on a Tuesday?
Of all the days, and this is a theory that Dave Malinsky had, my old friend and colleague, rest in peace. His theory was that on Saturdays, the quality of officiating is as low as it gets. There's more random results on Saturdays. Because every official, when teams play weeknight games, they'll play over multiple nights. So the refereeing crews, they have multiple crews. On Saturdays, they're all playing kind of on the same day. So the lowest rated crews get into action.
Interesting.
That was his theory. I don't know that it's true or not. That being said, a lot of handicappers, myself included, have had weaker results on Saturdays in college basketball than any other day of the week. Long term. Because of that enormous card. Because it takes so much to go through that card. What I've done in an effort to solve that problem, lower volume. That's what I do. I'm trying to keep my Saturday volume right there where it is during the week. And for me, that has helped. Adam?
Yeah, Adam, before you get into that, Teddy, man, that ref comment is super interesting, and it actually does make sense. I don't know, like you said, if it's true or not, but there's a ton of logic there. What I do really quick is, and actually Saturday has been my best day of the week for months now. So, but I think that's random, not based on my specific, I know it is Shabbat, but it's just random that I've had a great Saturday. I lower my units. So I normally put out 1 to 2 college basketball plays a day. Saturday, I tend to have 5, but all of them are 2% plays. So the way I attack it is I actually lower my bet size. Adam?
So no, I mean, I want to answer this question a couple of different ways because I don't think I like people bet differently. So like, for example, like if you're higher volume, it's going to be, I think, a little bit more of an issue because your volume might really get up there on Saturday.
Yeah.
What I would say is like, maybe so just from a betting standpoint, you can pretty much cut the day in half, take like 12, 2, and 4. Yeah, I'm using East Coast time. Take those first couple time slots, make them one day, take the last couple, make them another day, just to like, maybe like, because then you can come back, revisit, see how the early ones go. Like, that's just a strategy. The other thing for me personally, what I do, because I am like, so I struggle with Saturdays because I'm lower volume, like inherently. So it's like, I get to Saturday and I'm like, man, like I could easily have 8, 9 plays here. I don't know if I want to have eight or 9 plays. For me, it just like, it is sort of what I do the rest of the year. And then I really sort of stick to it on Saturdays, meaning, I think in college hoop, there's 362 Division I college basketball teams. You're never going to have a beat on all of them. So I try to like focus on like the 50 or 60 that I really feel like I've got like a great beat on. And on Saturdays, I may just ignore the rest of them. Whereas like on a weekday day when there's a little bit more time, a few less games going on, I might try to dig into some of those other games. But on Saturday, I'm like, let me just focus on like these are the teams I know. For me, it's easy because I try to I gravitate toward the teams I've seen play a bunch, the smaller conferences up here in the Northeast. It might be different for some, but like maybe for Brian Leonard, it's the Big West, right? Like he's out there. It's a conference he knows better. But the point is, it's like if that'll slim down your card if you just say, okay, I'm going to ignore the rest of these games and focus on these 50, 60 teams. It's going to make the board a lot smaller and more manageable. So that's a strategy I've used over the years.
Adam, I think your second point is great, but I have to call you out on your first point. I think the worst thing you can possibly do is split Saturdays in 2. I think what tends to happen is you end up chasing. You've got your plays set aside, and you're like, okay, here are my day games, 4 of them. Here are my night games, 4 of them. I'm only going to bet my night games if my day games win. Then they lose. And then you're like, no, I got to catch back up. I actually find that to be where everything goes wrong for me personally. So I would never split my Saturdays ever. Teddy, you wanted something? Yeah.
And I'm gonna say that what Adam suggested there, I think is certainly an idea to consider. All right. I know that it hasn't worked for you, Lawrence, but conceptually, instead of saying we're going to try to go through 160 games right now, you say, all right, let's do half the games. That's going to count as early Saturday. And then we'll come back, take a break, come back and do the back half of the games. That'll be late Saturday. It makes sense. It's not something I would talk anyone out of doing.
Yeah, like I think you should have. I think you should have the day done for the most part. I'm saying like. But like, so for me, I'll always have, like, if I know there's a Mountain West game at 10 p.m. I like that isn't one of those top ones. I may see how the day is going and then come back and say, you know what, I'm going to add one more here because I have the time to do that. Like, it's just weird. I wish they scheduled differently. I don't know why we have.
Sorry, Ad.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just saying, I don't know why we have 10 games on a Friday, a trillion on a Saturday, and another 10 on a Sunday. I don't know who I should talk to about that.
You should see the NHL card, bro. You should see what's going on in the NHL scheduling. Okay. Yes, we have Veno coming up. We have Andrew McInnis coming up. Let's move on. Adam, Trigger, we got St. Bonnie -5.5 versus LaSalle. How do we bet this game, my brother?
I actually like the favorite here. It's not my style to like want to lay points on the road with a favorite, but that's certainly the way that this game looks like it's going to go. So LaSalle's 3-10 in A10 play right now, which I actually think is overachieving. I thought this team would finish dead last in this conference. I still think they could, but they actually have, so their 3 wins are all upset wins. I think they were like at least a 5-point dog, maybe like a 5 or 6 point dog in all 3. One of which that came over the weekend against UMass. And if you watch a college basketball show yesterday, I talked about UMass. It was one of my plays. They ended up getting it done, but I kind of, put that loss on UMass. It was more of a UMass problem than it was LaSalle sort of being the better team, in my opinion. Now, LaSalle did get out to a nice lead in that game. They were playing from ahead. I think they put up 51 points in the first half, but it forced UMass, to get away from what they do well, which is go inside. And UMass did what they didn't do well, shot 27 threes, and they're a 280th nationally in three-point shooting. So I really think they kind of helped LaSalle out in that regard. St. Bonaventure, let's be honest, like Schmidt is just a better coach than Frank Martin as far as like an in-game coach. They're going to be better prepared for that. And I think they attack LaSalle in a way that LaSalle can't really defend them. So LaSalle's thing, the reason that LaSalle can hang in any game is they've got like 3 or 4 guards that can play. And even though they're undersized, they don't have much of a paint presence, their guards give them a chance. The problem here is St. Bonaventure is not going to be like outsmarted or caught off guard by that guard play because they have arguably better guards in the same positions. And what they're going to do is be able to play through the post, and Chad Venning, who's a monster. I've gotten to be like this far from this dude a couple times this year, specifically at Niagara when I was standing right next to the court, right next to him. He's absolutely massive. He is leading St. Bonaventure with 14 points per game, and I don't think LaSalle is going to have much of an answer for him on the inside. Now, what that means is LaSalle might have to, they might have to help to even control Venning, and then you're going to have, the St. Bonaventure guards, Mika Adams-Woods, Charles Pride, Moses Flowers, Daryl Banks, are better than LaSalle's guards, in my opinion. And so LaSalle's not going to be able to catch the Bonnies off guard here from a matchup perspective. And I think that really helps St. Bonaventure. If they play through Venning and can collapse the paint, people in the paint needing to help a little bit, it's going to open up the perimeter where St. Bonaventure's 32nd in the country from 3. They can get hot from 3. They have some really good shooters. Flowers is a good penetrator. Mika Adams-Woods is awesome. I think St. Bonaventure, it's weird that they're only 7-6 in A10 play because this team should probably be better. They've had some lapses this year, which are almost tough to explain. But they're starting to play better, and this matchup just really favors them. I don't see how LaSalle just goes lethal shooting the ball with their guards here, and I think Venning has a big game. So I'd actually lay it with the Bonnies here. Not my style, but I think the favorite probably pulls away in this one.
St. Bonaventure -6 over LaSalle, says Adam Trigger. That's the way to look Wednesday night college hoops. Adam, you talked about how you've been on a little bit of a roll lately. I remember last March you went on a pretty big roll. And for someone that does his work in college basketball all season long, not surprising to see you cleaning up as we approach March this time around. Talk about what you have going right now over at WagerTalk.com.
Yeah, I mean, I can only hope that it goes as well as the stretch from like mid-February to March last year. That's certainly what we're going for. It's been good. It's been good the last few days, 8-1 since Saturday. The 5%ers have been really good. That's something that plagued me a little bit in 2023. But since the calendar flipped to 2024, 6-1 on the 5% college basketball plays, and I've got another one going tonight. It's my only client play so far. So that is currently up on my page. If I do add Western Carolina as a client play, I will certainly let you know via my Twitter at TopLightSI. And I'm going to be on with Kelly Stewart for, I think, like 20 minutes or a half hour or until she gets sick of me, one of the 3, on her Instagram show tonight, answering any questions you got about the board. So if you have specific games right before tip-off and you want to know, if it's a bet or not or what I think about it, just join us on Instagram because we're going to be open forum, I believe, for like a half hour leading up to tip-off tonight.
That's awesome. Adam Trigger, thank you for joining us, man. Best of luck tonight. Teddy, did you continue watching Alexander last night?
Continue watching it? No, I didn't finish it or anything. It's fine.
No,
it was okay.
Watch
it was
more
a decent series. I appreciate the recommendation. I watched it only because you said.
But you didn't
I
finish
finished,
it.
I think three episode, half of it maybe.
Oh, excellent. I'm now watching Age of the Samurai, The Battle for Japan. It's done exactly the same way. It's so freaking good. My brother, what did we learn in the wonderful world of sports betting?
So the United States athletic shoe industry has an estimated annual sales of $120 billion a year. That's the entire shoe industry. What's that?
Betting was more, 127.
Exactly. Well, well, they don't know the exact numbers because they don't have the final issue, the December numbers from a couple of states. But the bottom line is we have the report out for legalized gaming in the U.S. for 2023, and the numbers are staggering. I saw 120 billion in handle. That's how much was bet legally in the United States last year. From a hold standpoint, the books got to keep more than 11 billion or close to 11 billion of that number. 9.1% sportsbook win percentage nationally, which is much higher than it is here in Nevada. That has a lot to do with the single game parlays that are such a big profit producer for many of the books back east. But the bottom line, 120 billion in in total bets, 11 billion in total profits. Looking forward, however, there are some concerns for this enormous growth of the industry. And the concerns are basically all the states that have gone legal. Well, the low-hanging fruit's all gone in terms of new states coming on board. There's still 12 states. Alaska doesn't move the needle. Idaho doesn't move the needle. Minnesota, there's a chance this year the handle there is going to be small. Oklahoma, small state. South Carolina, Utah. None of those states are going to move the needle in any real way. Minnesota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, there'll be something there. Utah's not going to happen. But there are some jewels still remaining. California and Texas, obviously, at the top of the list. Mm-hmm. Alabama's there as a huge potential or a market. Georgia would be a huge market. Missouri would be a significant market. And let's not forget Hawaii, where people love to bet as much as any place, as much as any nationality that I've ever seen. So it's certainly a big market in Hawaii, even though the population isn't great. But none of these states have a bill that's about to pass, on the verge of passing. We could see one or two this year. We could see none. But for all these years, we've wondered how much is getting bet, how much is getting bet. All the money flows to the global books. All the money flows offshore. We don't know. Now we're getting some ideas about how much is bet. And the answer is betting is bigger than shoes. That's what I learned yesterday, Prez. Back to you, my friend.
So, listen, I'm going to tell you that your take is kind of right and kind of wrong. And this is a conversation I have with a lot of people because, you know, the way we keep our ROI on WagerTalk, I think it's incorrectly done, but I've been outvoted. The bottom line here, Teddy, is when you spend, and we'll just go with 1 billion to make it an easy number. When you spend $1 billion on shoes, you get a pair of shoes. When you spend $1 billion on betting, it's not a billion. It's how many times a specific dollar amount rolls over. You can't roll over your shoes. So if everybody if 1 million people put $1,000 into a sports book and bet that $1,000 1,000 times over, it's still $1,000 to me. So it's an interesting discussion, but if you roll $1,000 over 10 times, you still started with 1,000. You didn't start with 10,000. Your volume was 10,000, but your dollars was 1,000. So it's a bit phony, that statistic, because I'd like to hear this from the books. How much was deposited? How much was lost? Not how many
we
times
have that number, Lawrence. If you listen to what I said, I told you exactly how much was lost. The books won. They won
11 billion.
$11 billion, 9.1% of the handle. So we know that number. That's not I'd like to know it. We know it.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if you roll $1,000 10 times, you didn't bet $10,000. You bet 1,000. You didn't. It's the same 1,000. You don't win and lose.
Assuming you won the first bet.
Well, why? You could lose it. No, if you're betting safe, if you put $1,000 into a bank account and you bet $50 a play, and you never put more money in the bank account, and at the end of the year your account is at 800, you've lost 200. You didn't lose all those bets added up together. You lost 200. You bet 1,000. That's the equivalent.
It's an accounting question, Lawrence. It's whether you're going to count every bet as a loss and every win as a win, or whether you're going to count your deposit as the whole thing. You can,
Teddy, if you put $100,000, if you put $100,000 into the stock market over a year period, you then roll that 100,000. You sell, then you buy, then you sell, then you buy, then you sell, then you buy. You still are only putting 100,000 in.
You explaining it 4 different times is not going to make me understand.
I love you, Teddy.
I understand your concept. I'm not convinced I agree with it. Let's see what Rob Veno thinks.
Robert!
Get me out of that discussion, please. That's your discussion.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Rob, one of our listeners writes in the chat room, tell us about betting first half in college basketball. Does anybody do it? Is there value to doing it? You're coming on here and you want to talk about Belmont and Drake. You've got a first half bet for us. So let's talk about it from two perspectives. One, just the very concept of betting first half in basketball, why you should do that. Is there value or isn't there? And then let's take apart that specific game.
All right. Well, I'll say this just from my perspective. When I play first half, it's generally due to expectation and most of the time on the home team's part that there's reason to believe they're going to come out from the opening tip and be successful right off the get-go. And where full game is concerned, you may not trust that they can hang on to that lead. So, the line is obviously shortened up. If you have a 9-point favorite and you're playing first half, you're only laying 4.5. If you get a quick explosion, you overwhelm the visitor. You cover your first half, maybe second half, the other side makes adjustments and you don't get full game. So when I do it, that's basically why I do it, whether it be from side or total perspective, either way. Sometimes from total perspective, not to talk too much here, guys, but real quick, if you're playing a game where there's a large favorite and you like total over, with the thought in mind that if they have an expansive lead in the second half, they may pull starters, then you want to play first half total thinking they're going to get it done immediately. Starters are going to leave the game. Maybe the total dies down because they start dribbling out the clock and whatnot. So just a couple of ways that I do it. I do it quite often, I have to admit, first half. And in college basketball here, second time around, I find myself doing it a little bit as well.
Teddy?
Well, let's talk about the Belmont game, Rob, that we were going to lead into.
Mm-hmm.
Belmont at Drake, and you want to talk about Drake first half in that game. So tell us why you're looking at the Bulldogs to cover for 20 minutes, not necessarily for 40.
All right. And with this play, Teddy, this establishes the fact that I am not a homer. My oldest son went to Belmont. I love the program. I'm going to play against them. So in this business, we're trying to make a little bit of money. I'm going to play against Belmont in this instance for this reason. It's a payback game for Drake. Again, we're talking about second time around in a lot of these conference matchups. The first meeting, first time they played, Michael Curb Center in Nashville, 87-65 Belmont, 22-point Belmont win. And Belmont was a 5.5-point underdog. It was the first game that they played without their star guard, Jacoby Gillespie. He was out that game. And Drake, obviously, I won't say obviously, but you get the feeling that they might have been a little complacent in that game. We see it an awful lot. When star player is out, the other side is a favorite. They get a little complacent. Belmont shot lights out in that game, 57.1 from the field, 54.5 from three, made 12 threes. It's interesting because Drake is the number one defensive efficiency team in the league. So again, to my point about maybe they were complacent, some of these numbers just don't add up when you check the fundamentals of both of these teams. That game got away from Drake. It's 15-15 with 10 minutes left in the first half, and after that, it's a disaster. They're down by as many as 32 late in that game. For Drake, on the good side in that basketball game, they shot 72.4% from two-point range. Just had a miserable three-point day, and that's uncommon for them because it's a good three-point shooting team. So let's get on to what's going on now. Gillespie's back. The team is 4-0. Belmont is straight up and against the spread since he's returned. They crushed Drake the first time. Simple logic is you got your star back. You crushed him the first time. Why wouldn't you beat him again? And if you want a counter response to that, All you got to do is look at last night's UConn-Creighton game. Donovan Clingan doesn't play first time around. Connecticut at home drills Creighton. Second time around in Creighton, Klingen's back, should be better. He can guard Kalkbrenner. Guess what? Creighton wins. That's college basketball. UConn was 7-0 straight up going into that game, hot as Belmont is right now. So I'm not saying that's definitely how it's going to happen, but that's college basketball. We all know it. I would say this. I shaved this game down to the first half for these particular reasons. A, Drake, you could argue Drake's the best team in that Missouri Valley Conference. I know Indiana State's gotten all the attention this year, but Drake is in first place tie with them at 13-3. They have the home floor, a pretty sizable crowd, and the revenge factor, all from the opening tip. Belmont has not been really tested in these 4 games. The one game when Gillespie came back against arch rival Murray State, they were losing in the second half, but the other 3 teams they played are not good Missouri Valley teams. So I think this is probably the best team they've faced. If you're looking for how well teams do in the first half, Drake has a plus 9-point scoring margin in the first half at home this season. It's a really good basketball team. Again, every win, there's only 3 games left after this one, guys, before conference tournament time. So you're in a first place tie for the number 1 seed. All wins, you got to have them. Little revenge. Good first half play. I think Belmont might make some second half adjustments. Let's play Drake first half minus 5.5.
Robert Veno joining us, everyone. And Rob, just before you started talking, so everyone knows we have a Slack channel, and Teddy and I have one we talk throughout the show sometimes. So I type in, great show so far, and Teddy's response, in your opinion. So let us know, guys. In my opinion, this has been a pretty good show so far. Robert, West Carolina +4 against NC Greensboro. That's Adam Trigger's bet. UNLV -6 at Air Force. What do we like?
I like UNLV, guys. And it's another second time around. It's another payback game. I think we all remember. Somehow, some way, UNLV got absolutely destroyed. I mean, it's probably the mirage of the Mountain West season. Air Force goes for 90 points in that game. That's 18 more than they scored in any game. It was their best field goal percentage, best 3-point game, best everything by Air Force. Roll into Thomas and Mack, win that game 90-58. 58 scored by UNLV, lowest total all season long. Worst everything for them. I have to believe this is a game they want to atone for. If you compound that revenge factor, and I'll call it payback. I just don't like to use revenge. Payback factor. You combine that with the way they lost that game Saturday to Nevada, blowing a 7-point lead with 3 minutes left against your in-state rival. And I think you have a little combination here of fuel for the UNLV fire in this game. Certainly they remember what happened to them at home against Air Force, and certainly they need wins now after losing that game to Nevada. Interesting, in the Mountain West, number 7 seed, UNLV, still only 1.5 games out of the 2 seed. So you can turn things around real quick. And UNLV heading into that Nevada game, guys, 5-game winning streak. So it's not like they're playing bad basketball. They went bad for 3 minutes. In this particular game, Air Force, if you just go through fundamental numbers, it's the worst defensive team in the league. I think Ken Pom has 9 defensive categories. They're the worst in the league in 6 of those. Offensively, they're the worst free throw shooting team. They have the highest turnover percentage. Since they beat UNLV, this team's 0-6. Haven't won a game since. They're 2-11 at home this season, 3-9 against the spread in conference, 0-3 against the spread as a home dog. When they're a home dog this year, they lost by 13, 19, and 28. So again, it's just not a good basketball team. The first game was somewhat of a mirage. For those who say slow tempo, low total correlates to home dog, I would just leave you with this. Air Force has been an over moneymaker this year. And for what it's worth, as slow a tempo as they play and as low as their totals are in games, they've given up 71.5 points per game at home on average, 77.1 in conference. So they're not holding people to 58 or 62 points. They're giving up a lot of points here. I think as long as they're ready, and they should be, UNLV covers 6 points pretty easily here in a payback matter.
So I got to follow here, Rob.
Yes, you do, Teddy. Yes, you do.
Yeah. Of course,
baby.
I had Air Force in the first meeting. As obviously, I didn't expect them to win the game by 32 points. They were double-digit dogs. But my thought process for supporting the Falcons in that game was that Air Force just matches up well with UNLV. This is one of those long-term, long-time conference rival scenario where you go back and look at the series history, and Air Force just bug the Rebels. And it's happened, it feels like for 25 years. Certainly in the recent meetings, Air Force wins last time out by 32. The previous meeting goes to overtime. The previous meeting, a 1-point game. Air Force won last time on their floor in straight up fashion. Do you worry at all about like a series history that just shows the Falcons just give the Rebels trouble, or does the spot trump all of that?
Yeah, I would think that some of that is due to coaching. Joe Scott's a real good coach on the Air Force side. And certainly, Teddy, when we make this ledger of assets, liabilities to making a play, what's good about your play, what's bad about your play, you're going to have something in that column that, would be a concern. Series history in this particular situation, while it's a concern, it's not a big concern because I think there's so many other things that stack up in favor of UNLV. If, in fact, young Kruger doesn't have his team ready to go, then I'm in a whole heck of a lot of trouble. But I do think that they'll be ready to go here. And, Air Force does one thing well. They shoot threes. And if you saw it the first time when they made 15 against you or 14 against you, you defend it this time, hopefully a little bit better, and cover that number. So I'll take my chances with the UNLV side.
Robert, what do you got to promote?
Let's promote college basketball. Prez, up and available right now, WagerTalk.com. Our top play of the night is there. It's been a pretty good run since January 1 of this year. All sports up, I think, like 35 units. So pretty good season so far. NBA's been good. College hoop been good. Of course, the NFL playoffs treated us real well. So once again, today's top plays up and available, WagerTalk.com.
Rob, thanks for joining us. And guys, we'll see Rob on Tuesday's show. He is the $2 Tuesday handicapper. It's already been chosen. We also have a great promo coming for everybody tomorrow. So check back. Teddy covers. Andrew McInnis still to come. Some NHL talk. You got your big game breakdown. Let's hear it.
Yeah, we're doing MLB season win totals. I got to give you 2 overs in the last 2 days with the Dodgers and the Royals. Today, we're going to talk about an under, a team that is bad going into the season and is likely to get worse before they get better. That team, the Chicago White Sox, lined at 63.5 wins. I think this is a 100-loss team. And of course, the White Sox heading in the wrong direction. They won 93 games in 2021. They finished at 500 in 2022. They were a 100-loss team last year. And I'm not convinced they've bottomed out yet. When we look at what happened in the offseason, they lost a shortstop, Tim Anderson. They lost a couple of key starting pitchers, Yasmani Grandal at catcher. And what they replaced them with, essentially not much. Then we look at the free agent status for a team. Again, this team, in a best-case scenario, they win 70 games this year. All right, you got Luis Robert going. Eloy Jimenez going to be a free agent. Their best pitcher, Dylan Cease, going to be a free agent at the end of the year. They're all likely to be traded at the deadline. None of them look like they're going to get re-signed. So a team that's bad going in is likely to get worse. You look at the starting rotation, it's as bad as any in baseball. You look at the bullpen, it's as bad as any in baseball. You look at the lineup, it's as weak as any, I guess, this side of the Oakland A's. This is a bottom feeder team primed to bottom out in 2024. Let's look at the Chicago White Sox. Under 63.5 wins. There's your big game breakdown. Back to you, Mr. Prez.
Teddy covers. A couple of quick things. Number one, I want to shout out to Las Vegas Chris. Las Vegas Chris yesterday posted an hour and 14-minute video up on our YouTube channel. He talked about, and I had no idea, he talked about the fact that the last year he's been battling cancer and he is now in remission. And he talks about the process, how it affected his life, et cetera, et cetera. It's certainly worth listening to. It's an extremely emotional video from a wonderful guy. And I just want to say hats off to you, Chris, for putting a video like that up, for being open about your battles. I want to give you a lot of love. I care deeply about you. And I hope that the remission stays the way it is. And my hearts and prayers go out to you. You are a wonderful man. And man, I'm emotional discussing this, dude, like flat out.
Amen.
Yeah. So let's talk about something a little stupider. So last night I sent you a video. I want to tell everyone about it.
I don't remember what video you sent me last night, dude. What did you send me?
So yesterday on the show, I talked about the fact that I taught my daughter how to roll joints.
Oh, yes. Now I remember. Yeah.
So she came up last night and she said, "Dad, can you? I can't do it as good as you. I mean, nobody can." She goes, "Can you teach me how to roll a joint?" So we videotaped Prez teaching his daughter how to roll a joint. I texted the video to you and Dave Sherapan, and I'm like, "Should I put this out on Twitter?" Your response was hell no, and Sherapan's response was a definitive no. But I do have the video on my phone, and I thought it was excellent instruction. Andrew McInnis joining us. Andrew, anything you want to say so far?
I'll look back to yesterday. I was walking my dog, and as I usually do when I'm listening to you guys on WagerTalk Today, and definitely had to. I'm usually not watching, but when I heard Teddy say that he saw Sherapan age like 10 years, I had to take my phone out of my pocket and look and see the expression on his face, and it was pretty funny. You know, Prez, I commend you and respect you for how you're being. I would say I want to be somewhere in the middle when I'm a parent. Probably not as extreme as you are, but definitely closer to that than the other side of things. So I can respect it. And at the same time, you know, people are going to do what they're going to do anyway. So I'm young.
I had a guy yesterday in the chat room go like, "I used to like Prez, but he's too liberal." He blah, blah. And another guy was like, "Are you crazy? You can't teach your kid how to roll joints. What if they don't roll joints?" I never started my children. I didn't grab my 15-year-old at the time or 16-year-old and say, "Hey, I really suggest you smoke pot." No, she did it on her own. After I found out, I'm like, "Well, are your joints running? We can't have that. I mean, if you're going to do it right." Okay. Maple Leafs and Coyotes over 6.5. This play makes a lot of sense to me. Tell us about it, and then Teddy will set up the prop bets.
All right. Well, there was a huge controversy in the NHL about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago about a huge slap shot into empty netter, and then it resulted in a cross-check as a defenseman for the Leafs was not happy about it. Morgan Rielly gets suspended for 5 games. Since then, the Maple Leafs have won every single game. They're on a 4-game winning streak, playing some great hockey. They've also gone over the total in 5 of their last 6 games. The one thing about this Maple Leafs team, they're known for playing down to their competition. Everybody in the world knows it. When they play bottom feeders, they give up goals. When they play, contenders, they play some of their best hockey. So here they are going from, one of the best hockey cities in the world to a stadium that's not even an NHL arena. It's a college campus at Arizona State University filled with 10,000 fans or less. Lot different of an atmosphere against a very bad team. I expect Arizona to come out firing. I think that they'll catch them off guard. Arizona's been playing some tougher teams. They've also been in some flat spots recently, but they do have some young forwards that are playing some better hockey. They've been going over the total, but also giving up goals. Arizona give up 6, 4, and 5 in their last 3 games. And some people might say to me, "Well, Andrew, you're talking so poorly about Arizona. Why not just take the Maple Leafs?" And the simple factor is that, like I said, this Leafs team does seem to play down to the competition, give up goals to lesser opponents. So I do believe Arizona can contribute to this total. And looking at the talent with the younger players, Logan Cooley, Matthew Nyes, I believe even if the big guys like Matthews and Keller aren't scoring, younger guys will certainly contribute here in this one. So I'm going to go over 6.5, Maple Leafs and Coyotes.
Buffalo is traveling to Montreal tonight, and the total in that game is sitting at 6.5, juice to the over. You have a player prop, Juraj Strakowski for Montreal to record a point. You're willing to lay minus 130 with this. Tell us why.
Teddy, his line mates their price for them to record a point, we're looking at around minus 220, 230. So obviously three guys there on a forward group. He's minus 130. I love the value here. This is a player that has a point in 9 of his last 10 games. He's a young player, only in his second year in the NHL. And I'll be honest, most people that know me know I'm a Canadiens fan, a fan of the team. But one thing being a fan can help you with is knowing the team and following them all the time to know if they're top heavy, if they have depth, who's scoring and who's not. And one thing about this Canadiens team right now, whether they're winning games or losing games, they are incredibly top heavy. They only have a few guys that are really scoring for them. And Uri Slafkovsky is one of them. Nick Suzuki is the other. And Cole Caulfield is the other. So the fact of the matter is, even though they aren't scoring a ton of goals per game, when they are scoring, Slafkovsky is certainly out there. He's getting the top 3 minutes on the team. He's getting power play minutes. And like I mentioned, compared to his counterparts who are minus 230, 240 to get a point, I believe this is a generous price at minus 130.
Slafkovsky to report a point at minus 130 in a game line 6.5 juice to the over. But when we talk about Chicago and Philadelphia tonight, the Blackhawks and the Flyers, that game lined with a total of 6 juice to the under. But we still like a player prop to score a point in this one. You get a plus price with Nick Foligno. Tell us why we like the old Nickster to score a point this evening.
Teddy, a lot of weird movement in that one, actually. We saw 5.5. We saw 6. We've even seen 6.5, then back to 6 here. So the odds makers are a bit confused with the Philadelphia Flyers and Chicago Blackhawks. When it comes down to it, I mentioned, look, in hockey, there's 4 lines, right? There's 4 lines of 3 players in forward groups. Then there's 3 pairings on defense. So people might say, how can you pick one guy to play well when there's so many options out there? The fact is, I find sometimes on the weaker teams like Montreal, like Chicago, it's easier to project who's going to have a great game because they don't have that many options. This is the guy that's really performing for them. Him, Bedard, a couple other guys are the only players playing at a high level. And he's getting plus 110. 8 of his last 10 games, he has recorded a point here. Philadelphia has been sliding a bit defensively. And Nick Foligno, when they picked this guy up in the offseason, they did not pick him up to be a real offensive threat. And that should say something about how poorly this team's performed. But I like the value here, plus 110 for a team lacking depth in a big way. As I mentioned with Slafkovsky, similar to Foligno, he's leading this team in ice time. He's out there on the power play. He will get his opportunities. And to be flat out, guys, I'm riding a great streak right now for a guy at plus 110 playing some good hockey. So 2 props, guys, and a nice total play.
Yep. Andrew, what do you got to promote?
Look, I definitely hasn't been my best NHL season, but we had a winning night last night. But I want to mention baseball. I was number 6 last season in the MLB at WagerTalk. Out of all the great handicappers here, I was number 2 in totals, plus 30 units. So it's a great time to grab that early bird special, which is found at all of our websites over at WagerTalk.com. So guys, team totals is usually the name of the game for me. First 5 plays, a couple props. But if you join me, you can get all my plays over at WagerTalk.com in the MLB.
Thank you, Andrew. What a show, Teddy. I know that's just my opinion and all, but a lot of people in the chat room said great show. Just Jeff said not bad, which I'll take. Just Jeff's a good guy. Anyway, we did make over 100
I'll take the
likes.
chat's opinion. I'll take the chat's opinion before I take your opinion. If the chat thinks that we had a good show, then we did. If you think we had a good show, it's pretty meaningless.
Yes. Fair enough.
You doing a presidential address or is it time to go?
Presidential address. It'll only be a minute. Let's go. Okay. So we got a bunch of NHL games tonight. I mean, I don't really love this card. I do have 1 play up for my clients tonight. But I'm going to give you guys 3 bets tonight. One of them is a plus 700. So stay tuned. I'm going to save that to the end. Full disclosure, I had a totally shit night last night for my clients. One of those just brutal nights. I went 0-2 in NHL and 0-2 in college basketball. I do want to say I'm up double-digit profits in both sports. So, I mean, nights like last night happens. I can't do anything about it. I should bounce back big. I do love my NHL play tonight. But anyway, let's get to it. Montreal and Buffalo, I like over the total of 6.5. And Edmonton and Boston, I like over the total of 6.5. Now for my plus 700. Bobby McCann, he plays for the Leafs, plus 700 that he gets a goal tonight. I think there's a lot of value there. That's it for the show. Theodore, I'm not only getting a shawarma for me today, but I'm getting one for my kids too. Take us home.
Sure. Enjoy the games. Good luck with all your